Greetings, family. This is Brother Ron. You are listening to and watching We All Be News, News Free Dixie for the 21st century. Can you dig it?
But Judge, you know what's interesting about Gerald Ford? He almost got killed by a woman. A white woman tried to almost blew his head off. And they stopped her. And she's still alive, Judge. They interviewed her about the Donald Trump situation. She's 94 years old. She's in a nursing home somewhere in Tennessee, I believe. And she basically regretted not finishing the mission. I mean, this is a 94-year-old white woman that says she wished she could have finished Gerald Ford, the president of the United States. Because she missed him barely. She almost hit him in the head. And they stopped her from shooting some more.
Trump almost got hit in the head. By the way, you
that's
see
stage. It says stage, right? People said that's fake.
But
that wasn't real.
see the latest stuff on that. Now that they're getting into his phone and stuff, it looks like he just hated because he was trying to find out where Joe Biden was. He was trying to find out where Kamala was. He was trying to find out where Trump was. And Trump just wound up having a convenient appearance 50 miles away from where he was. So he just wanted to kill somebody. And they're saying it looks like he had been inflamed by the rhetoric, which the rhetoric they're describing from what they saw in the phone comes from the Democratic Party, Maxine Waters and Kamala and Biden and all of the hangers on talking about the evils of Trump. He just felt like he needed to take somebody out and get that claim to fame. So he didn't care who. So it's a problem. See, they've ramped up the tension in this country where people who used to have political disagreements, and then go drink some whiskey, wine, beer, hang out and play cards, they want to go punch it out because they're looking at these folks as an actual enemy. What the hell's wrong with you, man? How can you support Trump? What the hell's wrong with you? How can you support that bitch, man? Damn.
Just so a lot of people believe that what happened to Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania was staged, that he staged it.
I've seen people shot from close up. One of the things is when somebody gets hit with a high velocity rifle, like he did the ear, you can see that puff of mist. Because it causes the flesh to vaporize, and you're 97% water. So poof, you see that. It's before the capillaries dump their blood in it, and you see a poof of white mist. And when you got a bullet going at about 2,500 feet per second, it's only a 22 caliber bullet. An AR-15, which stands for Armalite's 15th patented design. That's what the AR stands for. It was designed by Eugene Stoner. It fires a 22 caliber rifle bullet, which is commonly used in hunting purposes to kill varmints like ground squirrels, gophers, and stuff like that, or prairie dogs. It's not deemed a large rifle. In a lot of states, you can't do stuff like hunt 80, 90, 100-pound deer with it because it's deemed too small. And in the military context, it doesn't make any difference because you don't necessarily want to kill your opponent. You can leave his body on the battlefield to rot. You want to wound him and tie up 10 to 11 people on his side taking care of him as he recovers. So the point with the military rifle is to deliver fire and keep people's heads down. And if you hit somebody to wound, not kill them. Now, that being the case, he gets hit with a high velocity 22 caliber rifle. In fact, there are frequent conversion kits where you can take one of these 5.56, 223 weapons like we had involved here and put a rimfire adapter in it and shoot it down the same barrel. So it's a 22 caliber weapon. You saw the bullet hit, fired from 130 yards.
Oh, there you go. I don't believe in conspiracies, but I do. Getting too close to the truth. Remember Judge Joe Brown was able to prove that the gun they said was used to kill King wasn't the gun. We know now that the gun that killed King came from the FBI. As far as chain of possession, it came. You read the book, The Plot to Kill King by Dr. William Pepper, who was a friend or associate of Dr. King, and he was a lawyer and friend of the King family. And also at the end, he was a lawyer for James Earl Ray, who never stood for, no, he never had his chance in court to tell his side of the story. He basically made a deal via his mob lawyer, Percy Foreman, to, accept the guilty thing, but he never had an actual trial. But a lot of stuff came out in the civil trial, and on December 8th, 1999, in U.S. Civil Court in Memphis, Tennessee, the government was found guilty of killing Dr. King. Oh, you go ahead, Judge. Yeah,
okay. So anyway, this 22 caliber bullet hits him, but it's moving at about 2,500 feet per second, 130 yards downrange. All right. When it hits, it delivers a shock because it transmits this through the skull. It's like somebody, bam, hits you upside the head. So it stuns him. He drops, and you can see him in some of the video angles. He's down there like hell. And then what he does, he doesn't know that the sniper is no longer operable or operative or still breathing or whatever in the hell's going on. He gets draped all over by Secret Service agents, women, who are too small really to cover him and be effective. He stands up. He's given the power fist, and they're saying he says fight. I took a little lip reading, and he's not saying fight. He's saying fuck you, which I really relate to, man. That's some balls out, real John Wayne shit, goddamn fuck you, like hell, go for it, dude. Yeah. Tell us what he really said, because that's impressive. In the face of death, you stand up and do it. It takes him a while to get unstunned. That's like a prize fighter hitting you, bam, So he gets up in spite of it. He shows whether or not he's been in the military. Hell, you can't do any better with a uniform on than stand up and be defiant in the face of death and destruction, and he was. Meanwhile, we got this hoe that wants to take over for a real man who showed us some courage, bravery, and defiance, and didn't say fight. He said, fuck you. That's what he's saying.
Okay.
Man, that's the real deal.
Well, it's very like a boost of testosterone. The testosterone boost for a lot of people. Like, man, this man is something else. He's a fighter, man. I respect the president because he boxes like a heavyweight champion. He fights like a boxer. I mean, political arena, judicial. But my thing is, what would have happened in your opinion if he was killed that day? Well, how would the country respond?
I think some of the far right would be out killing some of the far left. Some of the cupcakes would be getting roasted.
I mean, a civil war then. You say it's a civil war.
I don't think a civil war. It wouldn't dissolve into states withdrawing from the union, that kind of thing. But I think you are playing with fire when you fail to realize that there are people who believe in the sanctity of the system, and they aren't really pleased with some of these folk that are trying to divest the system of being what it is and switch it over to something where the rainbow unicorn rules. They don't like that. They're tolerant because there is a built-in respect for the system that is put in an American's head, black, white, brown, red, yellow, which is a fundamental respect for law and order to an extent, which can be corrupted if nobody reinforces it. Like you get down in the hood in the hallway where you get that unicorn freak shit going on. But man, these folk are not one to mess with. And the left is playing with, I repeat, playing with fire because the right, they've acquired 22 million semi-auto carbines in the last 8 or 9 years. The AR platform, the Armalite platform, is the most popular gun in America. It's not new. It was patented 72 years ago by Eugene Stoner, 1952. And the deal is that you've got what is equivalent in the 21st century to the lever action rifle in the 19th century, the gun that won the West. When you see John Wayne in a black and white movie when you saw Clint Eastwood in a black and white movie, or even one in color, or where John Wayne was now in color movies with a patch over his eye, twirling his Winchester around. That AR is older than that Winchester was at the time you saw John Wayne and Clint Eastwood with one.
Mm.
So the Winchester at that time, what is it? The 1950s, 1960s, 1940s? Wayne used to like the 1892 Winchester a lot. That was his favorite. So 92 to 1950 is what? That's 58 years. Mm-hmm. So the AR-15 is 72 years old.
Mm.
See where that goes? In other words, you've got a weapon that is kind of, you don't need to take it to a gunsmith to work on it. You can take a wrench and you can do it. It's modern technology in one sense, but it's 72 years old. The AR is 72. The AK-47 was 74 years old, 77 years old. I know because I was born in 1947, and that's when the Soviets adopted it. It is 77 years old. This is old shit. And they talk about, why do you need these military weapons? Well, what would you suggest somebody hunt with? Well, why don't they get one of these lever actions? Well, the lever action is the Henry that the Confederates called that damn Yankee weapon you can load on Sunday and shoot all week. Military weapon. The bolt action is the Mauser 98. It was adopted by the German army in 1898. 126 years ago. So it's a military weapon. So what the hell are they talking about? I mean, the U.S. civilian population used the old flintlock musket that the military issued, the Springfield 1861 muzzle-loading musket. They used a Winchester that came from the Henry that the Union Army equipped with. They used the Spencer rifle that the Union Army was equipped with. That's the one that you see Clint Eastwood with Morgan Freeman in Unforgiven, is that Spencer rifle. Spencer went on to design all of the machinery that Ford, Chrysler, and General Motors used for their production lines in the 20s. Died a filthy rich man. You've got Mauser came up with the needle gun that the Germans adopted in 1841, for God's sake. That was a military weapon. The French used the chassepot, which was their bolt action. The Germans wound up with the Mauser 98, which has been the standard in the hunting field for 126 years. Damn. Winchester came out with the 1908 model semi-auto that's been used in the hunting fields. That designed for 122 years, 116 years. You know, what time is this where we have all this foolishness and people don't realize what they're talking about? All this bull hype, high-powered weapon. Hell, the military, by the way, the U.S. military just adopted a new caliber, the 6.8 by 51, because they felt that the caliber that you're talking about, it was too small and too lacking in power, which was all right at close range jungle distances where you wanted to wound as many Viet Cong as you could, or as many Soviets to tie up their medical facilities. Now that they've opened stuff up, they need a more powerful weapon. So the military has adopted the M7 carbine put out by Sig Sauer. They've got a 6.8 by 51 millimeter new weapon that's got a super high chamber pressure and is a super round. They've got a new squad machine gun to use it, because the one that they have now, the 5.56/223/22 caliber AR, is ineffective past a certain short range. So it's a varmint weapon. That's where they got the caliber from. Why we got to do this with the big thing here, 30 caliber? Let's shoot them with a varmint gun. Treat them like they're a gopher, and they still have to have the rooms treated. So, and by the way, 98% of the casualties are produced by artillery. We got lots of 155 howitzers in there that can lob high explosives over. They got a saying in the military. Many people are killed by bullets, but only high explosives kill enough.
Yeah, I mean, great points. But like with the Trump thing, I'm listening to people. I've been listening to people and talking to people about it being well, but they say it's staged. But I'm saying I don't think he staged it though. It is like a false flag. It could be a conspiracy.
But
it could be a conspiracy.
The brand of carbine that he had does not fire that accurately. If you take somebody that's going to have a minute of angle or less rifle that at 100 yards can reliably put 5 shots in 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch like that. Okay, maybe you can stage that. But if somebody's going to take that shot with the type of weapon he had that has an error probability like this at 100 yards, you can't stage that. Somebody's got to go in there with an intent to kill him. So how are you going to stage this and think you're going to survive when the only probability is to kill you? Now, the other thing is the guy was an amateur. You know what he did wrong?
What you do wrong?
He took a headshot. Sniper schools say you aim for a triangle that goes here because this doesn't move too much, but the head can do all kinds of things unpredictably. So if you shoot for this triangle at the distance he is, you can guarantee that you can fatally injure somebody if you hit in this triangle. Heart, lung, throat, spine situation. He didn't know to take it. He went for the head. If he had been looking like he was at the board, it would have killed him. The bullet would have gone straight through and out the back. When he turned, see animations with it, it went and it clipped his ear, but the shock wave went through the skull and he got dazed like a heavyweight fighter hit him. So if you're going to stage it, this isn't Hollywood. This isn't some kind of script. This is reality. You can't stage that. The only thing you can stage is arranging to kill somebody, which moves it into a different level. Plus, this was a crazy. Unless he's a Manchurian candidate for somebody and was trying to kill him. But I assume they would have given him more training and said, don't take the headshot, hit the magic triangle. Take him out.
Now, some people believe there was more than one shooter based on sound recordings. It's like a JFK Daily Plaza thing. What I'm talking about as far as stage is that the lax in security. It's like the Secret Service allowed that roof to be exposed like that.
Look. Let me talk about that. Why, in the name of their ordinary protocols, once this guy had been identified as a suspect for more than an hour, did they let him come up without checking this out?
Right.
3 minutes before the shooting, you have police counter snipers saying, hey, there's a guy up on this roof. Is he one of ours or what? Who is this guy? He's got a weapon. You should have removed Trump then. You see, why is it that the Secret Service was so far away? Why are you letting, by the way, now they're coming out, the Secret Service was stretched thin because of this UN function. Why didn't you let them get compromised and protect the former president? This isn't like this guy hadn't been president. All of the secrets that are in his head that can be used as a future resource for the country, even if he's not the active chief executive, you're supposed to protect him. You didn't. And then it took all that time for them to try to get up. That getting him out of there was just as clumsy, unrehearsed, and ill-practiced as it could be. Who jumped in the front seat on the passenger side riding shotgun? Who was the driver? Who ushered the president in between them to sit on each side with another guy, the fifth man? in the back, out the rear, ready to take down any pursuit. They didn't do.
See how it happened, folks. We having a good old grand time, and this is what it comes. You start talking this truth talk, or you go against the official narrative. They try to shut you down. Hopefully, the judge will get back on. Be down with Judge Joe Brown. Judge Joe Brown, be down. So I guess we're about to wrap this up, but I hope the judge can come back on. I want to ask him a few more questions as it relates to the Trump thing and the Secret Service. I think it's interesting that people don't realize that the Secret Service was created April 14th, 1865 by President Abraham Lincoln. And he got shot later that night because they didn't protect him. So the Secret Service was created April 14th, 1865. Lincoln got shot that night and died the next day. And really, the Secret Service should have been abolished November 23rd, 1963.
I'm back on. Let me tell you what the Secret Service got created for counterfeiting. They got paid the guardians of the president because effectively they were the only organized governmental police unit.
Hello? The judge?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Like the Secret Service was created for counterfeiting purposes by Abraham Lincoln, because a third of the U.S. currency was counterfeit back in the 1860s. So Lincoln created that through the Department of Treasury. Go ahead, Judge.
Yeah. So anyway, it was set up to combat counterfeiting. It just happened to be the only agency that was a federal law enforcement agency outside of the marshal's office, which was set up on one man and deputizing people. So that was a collective agency they could use. Now, Lincoln got shot because the U.S. Army major detailed to guard him in the booth at the theater.
Yeah, Forest Theater. Yeah.
He went downstairs to the bar to get a drink. And that's the equivalent of what they did with Trump. They weren't on their job, ill-rehearsed and everything else. And the guy from Pennsylvania that was put in charge of the operation had never done this before. He was a rookie. And they had subcontracted all of this out to other agencies affiliated with Homeland Security, not those who were charged with guarding the president. Then there's another thing, too, that they lack. There is a special thing, I am told, with being in the Secret Service. Do you volunteer for the VIP protection detail for the president and vice president, which means your job description means you sacrifice your life if necessary? A lot of people saying, hell with that. I'll go deal with the counterfeit money, but I don't even like the son of a bitch. I ain't going to give my life for him.
Right.
See, that's above and beyond. That's a forlorn hope thing they used to call it. In other words, you volunteer for it because you're trying to get out of maybe getting executed a cent to Leavenworth or something. And you survive and you make it, but give up all hope if you do it. So basically, it was incompetently done, and at least that woman finally resigned in the face of her incompetence, and she was a DEI hire as well, and was her assistant director. So it was a farce. Meanwhile, a large number of Trump's regular contingent was assigned to go guard Dr. Jill. They call her that, I guess. She's not a doctor, for Biden. So I guess his wife had a tea party that she siphoned off the Secret Service protection. It's kind of a case of just getting told, babe, you need to hold up. This is more important. He takes priority over you. But they didn't.
Oh, that's so you don't feel like there was anything nefarious or malicious on the part of the
No, it was nefarious taking that detail away from Trump. They know.
Okay, that's this is what they do. Let me see something real quick, y'all. Oh man, this is they love messing with me, boy. But anyway, this is the price you pay for being a truth teller. You get disinvited from the barbecue, and nobody wants you to have you over home for the holidays or holidays. But hopefully get Judge back on to finish his thought. But it's very interesting, like the lax in service, just like with JFK assassination in Daley Plaza. The Secret Service did not secure the buildings. The buildings were open windows. He was going down the street with tall buildings with open, unsecured windows. They changed the parade route at the last minute. you know, and the Secret Service was partying like rock stars the night before. They were getting drunk, high, messing around with strippers, from my understanding. So they wasn't even on their job when President Kennedy got his head blown off in the middle of the day. And what's crazy is the driver, William Greer, was originally from Ireland. He was an old gentleman. He was like, I want to say close to his 60s. And he slowed down instead of speeding up when it was under fire. This man actually slows down, and then they give the President Kennedy the kill shot. So I don't know what that's about, but a lot of people believe that the kill shot did not come from the school book depository. I don't think they found one fingerprint connected to Oswald in the so-called nest at the school book depository. Matter of fact, from my understanding, they found a partial fingerprint that belonged to Malcolm Wallace, LBJ's guy. But a lot of people, when the shots went off, from my understanding, a lot of the people in the crowd, they ran towards the grassy knoll. I'm talking about the Kennedy assassination, how the people reacted in Texas. They ran towards the grassy knoll. They ran towards the train tracks and pulled them tramps out the train, and the police had to save them. So don't people, because you have veterans and stuff there.
Well, you know, I got invited by the retired Dallas detectives who actually investigated the Kennedy thing, including the one who passed by Lee Harvey Oswald in the book repository. And had the limo out there. The limo still had the bullet holes in it, and one of them is a nice clean hole through the front windshield. And I told them to go run some tests. And I said, what you're going to find is if you shoot a bullet through such a windshield from the inside, in other words, from the rear of the vehicle toward the front, as the bullet is supposed to have gone, it'll bulge it out like somebody hit their head on it.
Right. Okay.
If it's from the front to the back, coming from the railroad tracks of those cars, it'll be a nice clean hole. They reported back to me that they had run the experiment on the identical armored glass, and it had a nice clean hole from the front and bulged out from the back if it hit from the inside. So their speculation was that the shot was not fired from the grassy knoll because of a good reason. You could see it if you were actually standing on the scene, because they had crowds watching the reenactment, and that was, you couldn't count on your shot path being clear. And when the limo came by, the president's head would have been about chest high to bystanders standing along the curb. So you couldn't count on a clear field. But if you're standing on the bridge, or where those 4 boxcars were, where they had 7 tracks on that rail bridge, or from the passageway through the bridge, which at the time of the events was open, you would have had a straight on shot for 9 seconds coming from about 110 yards down to about 60. And you would have had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 seconds to take a point blank shot from 120 yards down to about 60, 50 yards, which is point blank. You wouldn't have had to make any elevation corrections. And that's before the vehicle would have dropped down a bit towards your left as it was facing you. The grassy knoll, you couldn't have fired the shot from because people would be standing in the way of your target.
Right.
But at the grassy knoll, you could drop a rifle if you took the bolt out down to a tunnel that stretched 400 some feet to the other side of the rail yard and came out in some brush. We went down there, and you could, if you crouched over, you could run through the damn thing. So as detectives told me, they said 30 seconds after the shot, there were people in plain clothes, uniforms, everything. Nobody knew who was who, carrying rifles and shotguns. They are assuming now that somebody might have visited the grassy knoll where this sewage pipe opening was and dropped the rifle down there to an accomplice. And the person would have come from one of the boxcars, which you can see on pictures taken contemporaneously with events. The guy that said that found the rifle said he was talking to the superintendent in the basement. And because it was an old time elevator you couldn't summon, you had to go up and get it. They went from the basement up to the first floor, and you had to walk across the first floor in its entirety to get to stairs that went to the upper levels where the elevator was. So he said while he was walking down the corridor with the superintendent, Lee Harvey Oswald walked to him. He stopped him and said, "Who are you?" And the superintendent said, "He's one of us. He works here." So he let Lee Harvey go. But he said just as he was letting go, the elevator passed him. So somebody from the 6th floor was operating the elevator to go down, because that's where it was. He said when he got up there, he secured the Carcano rifle. Now, there was a fingerprint on the Carcano rifle, the buttstock, that was identifiable. It did not belong to Lee Harvey Oswald. And for years, they didn't know who that belonged to. Now, they got a clue from the repository on assassination records in D.C. on 14th Street that was created by an act of Congress in the 1980s, and you could secure copies of certified documents that the congressional or regulation required to be sent there. And Bush and Clinton both signed executive orders directing all agencies to send copies of all records that they had on any assassination, Kennedy, Wallace attempt, King, anything, to this repository. So there. And they said they made a request, and as a result of the request, they got a name. And when they ran the prints, known prints for this person, bingo, it was an exact match for the print that was on the Carcano rifle. The person that was in question had been an honor student in high school, captain of the football team, captain of the baseball team, student body president, had been somebody that went to Harvard, graduated from Harvard, came out, became a war hero in World War II, came back, and for some reason, in front of 30-some witnesses in a diner, shot somebody in the head 6 times, was convicted for murder, sentenced to be hung, and 6 months later, his death sentence was commuted to time served and the charge reduced to manslaughter. He was released, and he was the suspect in 20-some other killings that occurred in Texas over the years. Well, the interesting thing about it is this person supposedly died in a 1-car wreck in the Texas desert in broad daylight with no witnesses. The detectives indicated that they got a court order. This is after the assassination, long years after the assassination, to exhume the body. And when they went to do so, there was no body in the grave. Now, the person that certified this individual's death also certified John F. Kennedy's death. He also was in the private business of funeral home directing and owned the largest number of graveyards and cemeteries in Texas. He did the Kennedy autopsy. He was also the medical examiner for the state of Texas, but he wound up getting arrested and put in jail for being a hitman. There were a number of unsolved murders, and one of the would-be deceased survived being shot 6 times and several severe burns to identify the medical examiner. They had him in custody, and as they were later marching him to the Dallas County Courthouse for arraignment, he allegedly attempted to escape and was shot 14 times by deputies. Well, they buried him in his own graveyard, but the detectives also got an exhumation order. When they exhumed the grave, there was no body in it. So they were trying to figure it out. But anyway, they had evidence, and this person also was connected with Billy Saul Estes. So Billy Saul Estes was prosecuted, you remember his hookup with Lyndon Baines Johnson, not necessarily a friend, but as a crony. And Stephen Trott, who was U.S. attorney, later to become a federal judge, now dead, offered Billy Saul Estes a recommendation for a pardon through the president if the information he supplied was accurate, which it was, but they left it to the FBI to investigate. The FBI said, no, it wasn't. But guess what? The name that Saul Estes supplied was the one that years later turned up to be the one that left the fingerprint on the Carcano rifle. So that's in the record, and they got all that through the repository, and they let me take a look at the certified copies. So that's what it said.
I know the person that I heard that was on that fingerprint was on the rifle. His name was Malcolm Wallace, who also had a connection to LBJ. He was like one of his goons.
Wallace is that
he's like a serial killer, Judge. He's like a serial killer to me. Like military background. We talked about this, like military.
See, I said war hero. I just described him to you. His name was Wallace, but see, he was also supposed to be a hitman for the Texas oil mafia.
I believe that. I believe
so
it, man.
Anyway, he is supposed to have died in a one-car wreck in the Texas desert. The medical examiner performed the autopsy, supposedly, and had him buried in one of his private cemeteries. But when they exhumed the coffin, there was no body in it. So crazy, was this just somebody getting gone? And the medical examiner supposedly got shot 14 times himself, but there's no body in his grave either. So they took me on the tour of this shit. At first, I thought it was freak, except these were the real live detectives. Two of whom you can see right in the picture when Jack Ruby shoots down Lee Harvey Oswald in the parking lot the next day. These are the ones in the pictures,
Wow, that's crazy. All this stuff is insane. But like, just, I got to ask you, because the women that were guarding Donald Trump, and you had the person who was over the Secret Service. She was a woman. Do you believe women should be involved in Secret Service security?
Well, first off, you saw the flaw. They weren't strong enough to pull him down and keep him on the ground. He stood up with draped all over him. Second thing, the size differential was such that they couldn't actually physically cover him to protect him from getting shot as an alternative target. The Secret Service guy that was closest to Reagan got shot in the chest because he jumped in the way. He survived, wound up being a police in a jurisdiction, but he did take the bullet. But they weren't big enough to do that. And there's something that intrinsically bothers me about sacrificing a woman's life. They're supposed to be protected. It just offends my sensibilities. So, it's one thing, certain things you can do. It's a total another when you say your job is to sacrifice your life for this guy. That just seems poison. When the war goes down and the battles are fought and the population has been decreased, women are there to make up the next generation, to the members of the tribe or the people back up. They're not there to be sacrificed when there are men to be on the wall. That's just something wrong with that to me.
Judge Joe Brown's all-new barbecue sauce and seasoning. Justice in the form of flavor.
Law firms will take this as a retainer.
What? It must be a law firm where they hungry as hell. Now you gonna help me with this parole I'm dealing with?